In 2012, a little girl was playing on a school playground in rural New South Wales when she said something that stopped the adults around her cold. She told her friends that her 12-year-old sister was pregnant, and they didn't know which of her brothers was the father. That one sentence would unravel the most disturbing case of intergenerational incest Australia had ever seen. 5 generations, nearly 40 people, and a family so isolated from the outside world that this had been going on, completely undetected, for decades. This is the story of the Colt family. The farm sat outside Burrawa, New South Wales, remote, overgrown, hidden. Locals knew the family existed, but almost nothing about them. The adults occasionally left to work odd jobs. The children almost never appeared in public. And when they did show up to school, dirty, delayed, unable to read or write, teachers filed concern reports. 7 of them between 2010 and 2012. Nothing was done, because nothing ever is, until it's already too late. To understand how this happened, you have to go back to the beginning. The patriarchs of the Colt clan, their names protected, given pseudonyms by the court, were Tim and June Colt. Tim was born in 1943, June in 1948. They married in 1966. And here's your first warning sign. June's own parents were brother and sister. The rot started before Tim and June even met. Together, they had 7 children, and at some point in the 1970s, the entire family relocated from New Zealand to Australia, moving constantly, state to state, never putting down roots long enough for anyone to ask too many questions. Tim started a family band. They played country music at festivals and music halls across Australia. Wholesome, charming, recorded albums, love songs. While Tim was sexually abusing his daughters from the age of 12, he didn't just abuse them, he indoctrinated them. He brainwashed his children into believing that sex between siblings, between parent and child, was not just acceptable. It was expected. It was normal. It was love. And it worked. Because by the time his children were old enough to know better, they didn't know better. This was the only world they had ever been shown. Tim's daughter Betty became his protégée, his favorite, his heir. Betty would go on to have 13 children, most of them believed to be fathered by Tim himself. His daughter Martha had 6 children, most fathered by her own brother, Charlie, with whom she lived as husband and wife. His daughter Rhonda had 5 children, 4 of them fathered by Tim. And then it went further. Tim eventually fathered a child with his own granddaughter. His great-granddaughter Kimberly is believed to be the most genetically inbred member of the entire family. Read that sentence again. When Tim died in 2009, the cycle didn't stop. Betty took over as matriarch and made sure of it. The family purchased land outside Burrawa, large, secluded, invisible, and the abuse continued into the next generation, and the next, and the next. So back to July 18th, 2012. Police and child services arrive at the farm, and they are not prepared for what they find. 2 travel trailers, a garden shed, a larger shed with tents inside, tiny beds. The smell, officers have described it as almost unbearable. Human waste, filth on every surface, broken windows, exposed wires. The adults had been using the woods as a bathroom. 12 children were removed that day, ranging in age from 5 to 15, and their condition was devastating. Severe fungal infections, catastrophic dental decay, malnourished, underweight. The 15-year-old was functioning at kindergarten level. Several children couldn't speak coherently. They didn't know how to use cutlery. They didn't know what toilet paper was. Teenagers were still soiling themselves. Many of them had the same physical characteristics: low-set ears, misaligned facial features, the visible markers of multi-generational inbreeding. And then the children started to talk. A 7-year-old described watching her mother and her uncle having sex in the tent next to her. Girls described being tied to trees. Children as young as 5 were exhibiting highly sexualized behaviors that their foster parents had never encountered before. One foster family caught their 9 and 12-year-old foster boys attempting to restrain their 18-year-old foster sister. Some children became violent in therapy, threatening to stab, to cut, to hurt, because that was the only language their nervous systems had for feeling unsafe. And in September 2012, DNA testing confirmed what investigators already knew. 11 of the 12 removed children were the products of incest, some from half-siblings or cousins, others from a parent and their own child. The only child with unrelated parents, 5-year-old Cindy, and she was the only child developmentally on track, the only one who could speak clearly, the only one without learning disabilities. The data couldn't have been more stark if someone had designed it as a study. There was also a death. A 2-month-old baby girl named Sally, born to a brother and sister within the clan, died of Zellweger syndrome, a rare genetic disorder that only manifests when both parents carry the same mutated gene. In closely related parents, the chances of that happening rise dramatically. The inbreeding hadn't just destroyed childhoods, it had taken lives. Now here's where this case becomes genuinely infuriating. 80 charges were brought against 8 adults: incest, child sexual abuse, indecency, perjury. Most were dropped. Charlie, one of the worst offenders, faced 27 counts. He was ultimately tried on 2, found not guilty. The judge cited inconsistencies in the child's police interview. Betty served 12 months, not for the abuse, for attempting to kidnap her teenage sons from foster care and planning to take them to another state. Police had her phone tapped. They heard her speaking to her 15-year-old son in what investigators described as sexually charged, flirtatious language. Her 15-year-old son. The women who continued to lie about the paternity of their children served 1 to 2 years each for perjury. The only person who served meaningful time was Betty's brother, Rodri, 4 years for the rape of his 17-year-old niece Petra. 4 years for a crime committed within a family that had been running an intergenerational abuse operation for 5 decades. The adults stood in court and insisted every child had been fathered by outsiders, drifters, strangers. One of them was, apparently, a Scandinavian tourist named Sven. The judge explained that DNA evidence proved otherwise. They didn't believe him, because this is what total psychological capture looks like. They weren't acting. They weren't strategizing. They genuinely could not process a version of reality that contradicted what Tim had spent decades programming into them. That's what makes Tim Colt the true villain of this story, and the most infuriating kind. He died in 2009. He faced nothing. He was never arrested, never charged, never sat in a courtroom and had to answer for what he built. He built a machine for manufacturing victims and then left other people to run it. The children are adults now, Their identities remain protected. What we know is that some of them have drifted back into contact with Betty and the other women. Betty's social media, discovered by online investigators, shows her surrounded almost entirely by members of her own family. She once posted a photo with 2 relatives. The caption read, "Love makes a family." Here's the question I'll leave you with, because this case doesn't have a clean answer. The adults who perpetuated this abuse, Betty, Martha, Rhonda, the others, they started as victims. They were born into this, brainwashed from birth, sexually abused before they were old enough to understand what was happening to them. Does that make them culpable for what they did to their own children? They knew enough to tell those children to keep secrets. They knew enough to lie to a judge. They knew enough to give fake names for fake fathers. They knew. They just didn't stop. If you want more cases like this, the ones that don't make the mainstream news cycle but absolutely should, subscribe. I cover crime, cults, and the hidden mechanisms of human cruelty. New uploads every week.